So about 3 years ago, I was approached by a publisher I'd worked with quite a lot, Charco Press, who do Latin American fiction. They're based in the UK. And we were talking about doing a new book together, and we were going to set off on a translation of a book by Diamela Erti, Chilean writer, really great, incredibly difficult to translate Chilean writer. And I am always trying to find ways of getting people who haven't thought about translation very much to think about translation, finding places where I can kind of have those conversations. And so I write about translation quite a lot, but I write about it for like newspapers and things. I'm not an academic, and I'm not someone who's written for academic presses, but if I write about translation, it'll be for the New York Times or the Guardian or somewhere where it'll be introducing it to people for whom it is a relatively new subject. And what I proposed to Charco when I was setting out to do the Diamela Erti book was something I'd done a couple of times before, which was to keep a blog sort of following the process of translating this novel. And I asked them basically if I kept a blog, would they post it on their website, the publisher's website, over the course of the 3 or so months I was going to be working on this book. And the idea was to let people see the process, to be quite concrete about it, and not to write about translation in a very abstract way, but to write about issues I came across in quite a concrete way. Not to write about like what it feels like to be a translator and what the life of a translator is like and how much people should pay us and those things, but really like the first post was, so I'm going to translate this book by Diamela Erti. I wonder what it's like. And then the last post 3 months later was, well, I'm clicking send now, it's ready to go to the publishers. And along the way I described challenges with the title and with the friction between the languages and the gender and the pronouns, and just really quite concrete things, and looked at and shared slightly humiliatingly, this is a bit of my first draft, and this is, it's quite good for the ego, I have to say. So I wrote this entire blog over the course of a few months, and at the end of the process, when I had delivered the book, Carolina, the editor at Charco Press, called and said, so are we going to publish this blog as a book now? To which I said, no, obviously. It's a really weird idea. But after some haggling, she won. And we agreed to publish it as a book. We ended up doing something which was quite fun in some respects, which was, we published on the same day as the Diamela Erti novel I translated. They have sort of matching covers. And we kind of launched them into the world together. So we have Diamela's novel in my translation and sort of the making of. And actually this book there's quite a long introduction, which is a kind of general thoughts about translation. And there is an afterword, which is 3 pages long, but everything else is almost verbatim as it appears in the blog. I did very, very little editorial work to it. So it's a little bit sort of, rough and ready. But it's been really interesting to see the reaction to it, because many of my translator friends, people who know about translation, interested in translation, have read it because it's, I assume they will be interested. But the readership has been in some ways much more interesting than that, because it was written for people who are not. It was written for civilians rather than, professionals.
But done in a very readable way, in a way that people who read it, who aren't translators, actually makes them stop and think about their own way of reading and so, yeah.
I think that's the hope, because I always intended it to be not, I have a sense, like, most of my friends, my old friends, are not translators, but I also have a sense of what would make them laugh, or how much I need to explain. I also think
this is exactly what I always think.
There's quite a lot of.
Yeah.
One of the most common reactions I got from translator friends. I don't think any of my translator friends read it and learned anything new. That's not how it works. But a lot of people read it and went, "Oh, I'm so relieved."
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, or even worse. Your first drafts are even worse than my first drafts. You found all these things difficult. That felt like my that sort of penance. I feel like my act of my gift to the community.